The big increase in government science funding earlier this century should have signalled happy days ahead for the CSIRO. But despite being highly regarded for its research work, the agency was not a beneficiary of the largesse.
With alarm bells well and truly ringing, it had to quickly reinvent itself. The story of how it did just that is now told in a new book called Icon in Crisis. Its author is Ron Sandlin. He's a former senior executive at the CSIRO, and he joins us now from Sydney. Ron, good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael.
Take us back to those critical days in 2001. You got the bad news at the CSIRO that you were left out of that funding initiative. It was the sort of, reading your book, an existential crisis for the CSIRO.
It was indeed, and in fact, at that time, I think most of the staff hadn't realised that CSIRO was not as highly regarded by the government as they thought it was. And indeed, the $3 billion fillip for science that was announced was, without CSIRO being mentioned, was a huge shock for CSIRO and a shock for the incoming chief executive, Dr. Geoff Garrett.
And the new chief executive and the senior executive team therefore had to get yourselves off the ground, dust yourself off, and come up with new flagship initiatives. Ron, I'm a great fan of acronyms, and I love the ones in your book, including BHAG, B-H-A-G. Tell our viewers what that means.
Well, it's basically pronounced BHAG, and it was an invention of Collins and Porras in their book Built to Last. And basically it's about a goal that's engaging, that grasps the hearer immediately, that they understand what is meant by it, and it's meant to be a big, energising goal that drives an organisation forward or into different territory, and that's what CSIRO took on as one of its challenges.
It's shorthand for big, hairy, audacious goals, and you had to come up with quite a few of those to go about reinventing the CSIRO. That's
right, and ultimately we dropped the term BHAG because in an organisation like CSIRO, it was seen as a too testosterone-laden term, so we replaced that with the blander flagship term, which is being used all around the place. But it was a huge change for CSIRO, and we did come up with a number of flagships in areas that were really bringing together the science from across the organisation and later from outside the organisation to look at really major national challenges in areas like water, like energy, like preventative health, like light metals, like food futures, for example.
Dr. Geoff Garrett, the new chief executive, as you said, Ron, certainly had his work cut out for him. He encountered some staff resistance at the CSIRO, and also, in a very telling forward to your book, Catherine Livingstone, who was the then chairwoman of the CSIRO, tells of herself coming under pressure from fellow board members about this reinvention process. It's a pretty tough ride there for so many years, wasn't it?
It was a very tough ride, and yes, Geoff Garrett came under a lot of pressure, both from staff and also externally from the media, where the aims of the flagship initiative were really completely misunderstood and misrepresented. But we had a look at the risks associated with the introduction of the flagship initiative, and in fact, there were red flags all over the place, and when the board looked at that, they really took fright. But thanks to Catherine Livingstone's steady leadership, she basically faced down the board and insisted that management be given the chance to put these flagships into place. And she was very glad that she did take that decision, but it was courageous on her part.
And finally, Ron, let's end in the present day. We're now in 2012. We've gone through that decade or so long period of reform at the CSIRO. Has the agency, in your view, regained that lost public trust, that lost public respect?
Well, look, I believe so, Michael. Basically, from the government's perspective, the government's put an extra $500 million into the flagship initiative. CSIRO's budget has increased quite markedly, and the organisation is now running 11 flagship projects, most recently biosecurity and digital productivity have been added. So there's a range of these large multidisciplinary projects across the board. Furthermore, there's tremendous collaboration now going on through money that was specifically set aside called the Flagship Collaboration Fund to actually run projects with major universities, with the best and the brightest outside of CSIRO as well as inside of CSIRO, and that collaboration is also really taking hold. I think CSIRO is now in a much better place than it was in the year 2000.
Okay, Ron Sandland, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.